Sure. Here's a continuous, heartfelt 10-minute read story based on airport staff stop tomb guard escorting fallen soldier. What happens next will move you. The airport was unusually quiet that morning, the kind of stillness that feels heavy rather than peaceful. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the wide glass windows, reflecting off the polished floors where travelers hurried past, lost in their own worlds. Amid the rhythm of rolling suitcases and distant announcements, a man in immaculate uniform stepped through the sliding doors. His posture was straight, almost unnaturally so, and his eyes held that steady discipline that can only be forged through years of duty. He was a member of the U.S. Army's 3rd Infantry Regiment, known to many as the Old Guard, the soldiers who stand eternal watch over the tomb of the unknown soldier. Today, though, he wasn't reporting to Arlington. Today, he was traveling home, not for himself, but for another soldier who would never again return on his own. Cradled carefully in his gloved hands was a small, flag-draped case containing the remains of a fallen service member. Every movement he made was deliberate, respectful, and steeped in reverence. As he approached the check-in counter, a few people turned to look. Something about the uniform demanded quiet attention, even for those who didn't understand its full meaning. The airline attendant behind the counter smiled professionally. "Good morning, sir. Can I see your—" Her words trailed off as she noticed the folded flag and the military insignia. The man nodded slightly. "I'm escorting a fallen soldier home," he said, his voice calm, but carrying a weight that silenced everything around them. She blinked, unsure what to do next. Protocol dictated certain procedures, but emotion has a way of bending rules. Still, she hesitated. "I'm sorry, sir, but we'll need to verify some documentation before you can proceed with the casket." Her words were routine, but they felt wrong in the air. The tomb guard didn't flinch. He said, "Of course," producing the required papers. His tone carried no anger, only patience, the kind that comes from understanding duty in every form, even bureaucratic ones. As the staff verified the documents, a small group of passengers began to gather nearby, their whispers fading into silence when they realized what was happening. A mother holding a toddler pressed her hand to her chest. A young man in jeans removed his cap. The soldier stood motionless, the flag case still in his hands, his gaze fixed on the middle distance, trained to never show strain, never reveal the burden he bore. Finally, the attendant handed the papers back. "I'm so sorry for the delay," she said, her voice trembling now. We we didn't realize." The soldier gave a small nod. "No apology needed, ma'am. You're just doing your job." But before he could move toward the gate, another attendant came rushing up holding a radio. "Sir, please wait. Security wants to escort you through a different route." The tomb guard hesitated for the briefest second, the muscle in his jaw tightening. He said quietly, "I'd prefer to stay with him," glancing down at the flag. "He deserves to go the same way everyone else does." It was not defiance, it was respect, the kind that comes from knowing what sacrifice truly means. Word began to spread through the terminal. Passengers waiting at Gate 47 stood up, some took off their hats, some placed their hands over their hearts. A few began to softly hum the tune of the national anthem, not out of showmanship, but reverence. The melody spread, trembling and imperfect but sincere. The airline manager arrived, visibly emotional. "Sir, we've arranged for you to board first, and the flight crew would like to pay their respects before departure." The tomb guard nodded once. "Thank you, but please, let the family board first. They've waited long enough." A hush fell over the concourse. From the corner, a small group approached. A middle-aged couple walking slowly, the woman clutching a photograph against her chest. The soldier straightened, then lowered his head slightly as they passed. The father met his eyes for a brief second, and in that silent exchange, everything was said. Gratitude, pain, honor, loss. Words would have only cheapened it. When the time came to board, the airline staff stood in two rows along the jet bridge. Each one of them, from pilots to baggage handlers, paused and bowed their heads as the tomb guard passed by with the case. The captain saluted. The flight attendants, tears shining in their eyes, stepped aside to make room. Once on board, the soldier placed the case gently in a secured area. Then, without fanfare, he took his seat near the rear of the plane. A woman across the aisle whispered to him, "Was he your friend?" The guard looked out the window. "He was my brother," he said simply. "Maybe not by blood, but by oath." During the flight, there was no movie, no chatter. Even the children seemed to sense something sacred was in the air. When the pilot announced their descent, he paused, his voice catching. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to carry home one of our nation's fallen heroes today. We ask that you remain seated for a moment after we land to allow the military escort and the family to disembark first." When the wheels touched down, the cabin was silent. No clapping, no shuffle of bags, just a deep, collective stillness. As the door opened, the soldier rose, straightened his uniform, and lifted the flag case once more. He turned to the passengers and gave a small, dignified nod before walking off the plane. Outside on the tarmac, a line of uniformed soldiers stood waiting. The casket was transferred with ceremonial precision, each movement mirrored, each hand steady. The family stood nearby, holding each other, the wind carrying their quiet sobs across the concrete. Then something unexpected happened. One by one, the airline staff came out from the terminal. Baggage handlers, ticket agents, cleaners, and formed a line behind the military honor guard. They didn't speak, they didn't move, they simply stood at attention, a spontaneous formation of civilians paying their respects. The tomb guard placed his hand on the flag, then stepped back, saluting with flawless precision. The family approached, and the father whispered, "Thank you for bringing him home." The soldier lowered his salute and replied, "It was my honor, sir. He stood for us. This was the least we could do for him." As the hearse door closed, the early morning light caught the corner of the flag and made it shimmer like it was alive. The crowd stood in silence until the vehicle disappeared beyond the gates. Only then did the tomb guard allow himself a single, deep breath, his composure unbroken, but his eyes glistening. He had fulfilled his duty. The unknowns he guarded back at Arlington would have understood. Another brother had been laid to rest, and 1,000 strangers had learned, if only for a moment, what honor truly looks like. And as the airport slowly returned to its ordinary rhythm, rolling bags, boarding calls, and the murmur of travel, it carried with it the quiet echo of that morning. Respect born not from orders, but from the simple human truth that sacrifice deserves remembrance. Would you like me to make this story more cinematic, like a short film script, or keep it in this narrative tone?